So we're really keen to talk about how to defeat, future biological threats. But before we do, it will be great to get a bit of background on you and JLabs, of course.
Sure.
So the first thing I would like to know is, do you consider yourself as an innovator?
Do I consider myself an innovator? I think I support innovators. So I think my role is really to facilitate innovation.
Hmm.
And so I have to have an innovator's mindset. I've worked at startup companies and I've been in that position, but I don't have the same risk. I don't personally take the same risk that all of those of you in the audience are taking in terms of starting a company. So sometimes I feel embarrassed to put myself in the role as an innovator. I think I'm
Modest.
more comfortable to say that I support innovation, and that's probably but that's needed and necessary as well. So I'd say I support innovation, but I would be a too far a jump for me, and I would feel uncomfortable to say I'm an innovator.
Okay, sub question to that is, what's your vision for the future of biotech innovation?
So I think in terms of biotech innovation, I really look at it from the Canadian context. I work for JLABS. JLABS is Johnson and Johnson's incubator. Johnson Johnson's the world's largest healthcare company. But I'm a Canadian working for this multinational corporation, and my focus is really how can I help Canadian companies grow and scale. So when you ask your question and talk about the future of biotech, I really internalize that as how can I help Canadian biotech. And so what I'd like to see is, in the next 3 to 5 years, I'd like to personally be responsible for, 5 to 10 companies being able to make it to some significant stage of maturity, meaning they've been able to raise a Series A financing. So I think, when we talk about the future of biotech, I try to make it very personal and things I can do to kind of help. And if I can get 5 to 10 companies, through to that maturity stage, I feel like I've done my part to help that evolution. And it's going to go where it's going to go. Some of those factors are beyond my control. But certainly, if I can help get 10 companies or 5 to 10 to a Series A round, then I've done my part.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so here at Innovators at Montreal New Tech, we're fairly familiar with the concept, startups, incubators, and probably related to what you just said is what kind of makes JLab stand out from the other incubators? What is your secret spice, let's say,
Yeah, I say the
or
secret
your
spice
personal
is
touch?
that J&J connection I talked about. I said, like, my
Yeah.
goal is to get 5 to 10 companies to a Series A. And so what we find in Canada is that companies really struggle to grow
Hmm.
beyond a certain stage. And so at JLabs, we provide them space, which is obviously important. They need a space to go. But I think more importantly, they need mentorship guidance. They need market facing advice from a large company. And at JLabs, we're doing that. And so it's that market facing piece, but we're also doing it within the context of an open innovation model. So we don't take any rights in the IP. We don't
Oh
get
wow.
a first right of refusal or take any equity participation in the companies that don't join JLabs. They apply, they join our facility, and we try to give them all the support they need to help get them to that next stage, that Series A financing. So for me, it's the market-facing advice, the open innovation model, and the access to the resources and supports they need to help them accelerate their product or technology.
Yeah, that's a fantastic open innovation mindset right there. And kind of speaking of your personal goal, you said 5 to 10 startups leading to Series A, for example. What currently right now you're the most proud of? When it's a specifically difficult days happens, you look at that and it's like, oh yeah, we did right there.
Yeah, it's funny is when you ask me that question, I kind of think when people ask me, I have to be careful because the companies within JLabs are a little bit like my kids. So when you ask me that question, I can't say that I've got a favorite child. So I can't use names. But I'd say that we've been involved in several of our companies in the last year during COVID-19 of raising money. And we played an active role in that, first of all, by helping them get a chance to do their experiments and advance their technology, but also by
Hmm.
working with them to find investors, by being a source of information to those investors and being a voice to validate this company. So I think we've done a lot, from in access to resources or connections. So we've had a number of companies within our JLabs at Toronto site raise money. We've had some of those companies engage in partnerships with J&J. So for me, it's all of those things make me feel proud that we've done our part as JLabs to help those companies grow and succeed. And that's my pride point. I can't name any names. because I don't want to call them out specifically, but and I'll miss some. But I think that being able to help companies raise capital and engage in corporate partnerships, that's what JLABS does, and we've done that this year, and in one of the most difficult years. And so that's something to be proud of.
Hey, it is, and I think it tells a lot about the capacity of building an incubator in that environment to kind of get nourished by the success of everybody, right? It's not about just one success; it's about everybody. And if you have a startup, don't forget there's a team of people supporting you, and maybe just take a little time sending them a nice message saying like, hey, you remember when you did this? It helped me to connect to that and that, and that really unravel interesting opportunities, for example. But let's continue. I'm curious, for example, when we looked at JLabs, Toronto was actually the first location outside US. What kind of changed maybe in the industry in the last few years that allowed that kind of location to pop on the map, pop in the
I
map,
think all
let's
the
say?
ingredients were there. So when we think about Toronto, we think about, it's at the heart where our location is presently. It's at the heart of a number of academic institutions, and it's also at the heart of the financial industry in Toronto. And we're at a phase where
Hmm.
there's been enough investment in basic research that we're starting to see that translational impact of that investment start to occur. So I think we're also seeing universities and governments investing in translation. So not just basic research, but translation and putting specific resources behind that. We're part of that equation. So you need basic research. You need an investment in basic research. We have that in Toronto. You need a capital market that's interested in providing risk capital to those companies. That's happening. And I think you need a translational infrastructure to help with that. So I think in all of those check boxes, if you want to call them that, we've been successful in Toronto in doing that. I'm not saying that other places aren't cracking the nut on it as well, but in Toronto, I think we're a little bit ahead in that regard. And so, that's why, for a number of reasons, JLabs at Toronto made sense, and why we've been successful, quite honestly.
Yeah, and speaking of which, you've been doing that for 5 years now, and I'm curious, what are the things you learned over the last 5 years, and what are the things that you haven't learned yet, and you still have to fine tune a bit, let's say, for the next 5 years?
I think it's focus. So I think we've learned that we can't be all things to all people, and that every ecosystem is
Mm.
good at certain things. So in Toronto, and in Canada generally, we've seen a real strength in artificial intelligence, and that across all domains, but specifically the intersection between artificial intelligence and life sciences. We've
Hmm.
seen a tremendous investment and success in translational research in cell therapy and gene therapy. And so we've seen that those are the areas of strength, and that's really where we need to focus our activities. And so I tell anybody, even people starting up a small company, is like focus on your strengths, because that's where you can really generate the most success. So I think that's where, that's what we've learned. I think what do we need to learn still? I think it's, I talked a little bit about that talent piece and helping some of these companies grow and scale. Are there things beyond mentorship and space that we can provide? Obviously, access to capital, but are there other tools we can bring to the marketplace to help them grow and succeed? I think there are, and so in the next coming years, we want to think about other ways we can show up with these companies in Toronto, but also with virtual models to reach out to companies in Montreal or Vancouver, or wherever they are in Canada, to see if there's other things we can do or other ways we can connect with companies. So that's kind of the next
Hmm.
iteration, I think, is can we move beyond bricks and mortar? Can we bring things other than just space to these companies? And that's probably where that is where we're going to be putting our focus moving forward.
So I think I have a nice follow-up question related to that, which is uh, companies who are still forming, they're still redefining. They pivot every once in a while. Um, and of course, you have, for example, Johnson and Johnson that has a bigger structure, and they also get constantly in touch with different organizations. But you're uniquely kind of well positioned to kind of show an example in some ways. And where I want to bring you to is, let's talk about, let's say, corporate responsibility. The role of companies everywhere right now, it's been heavily defined and redefined. All the social components, environmental components, all of those things uh, are slowly gaining traction within the more traditional sector. We also see that on the other side, even nonprofits right now, they're questioning their own role, saying like we cannot just advocate for one specific type of mission. We have to be more financially viable and etc. So everything here is changing. How is an incubator like JLab kind of positioned to maybe step up the game in terms of corporate responsibility? Is there already some initiatives in the work there?
There are. So, I mean, we've always put a focus on STEM as well as diversity in both the companies we source, the programming we
Nice.
put on. We are probably 30% of our companies are either are minority led. So we or have female founders. So we've done well. I
Hmm.
struggle sometimes to say that because that makes you think that the work is over, and it's not. I think the events over the last year have made us all realize that systemic racism and barriers to people who are underrepresented exist in every structure, and I think we always have to be active and vigilant to make sure that we're doing what we can to eliminate those barriers. I think we've done some good things. We started a Women in STEM program at JLABS, where some of the female entrepreneurs who are within the companies to get together, and we facilitated that, and now it's grown into its own
Nice.
organization. We as J&J Innovation ran what we call a quickfire challenge, basically a call for innovators in the Black community in the U.S. to come forward with innovations in the consumer space. So there's numerous things we can try. So we've done a lot of things in the past, but I think it's incumbent on all of us to continue to keep that momentum going and add to it. Because I think people have been left behind. There have been inequities, and we need to continue to address them and again, find the systemic barriers that may be preventing people from fully participating in broader
Yeah.
societal structures.
Yeah, it seems like the right attitude. Say, this is what we've done, but it's not over yet, and we find solutions step by steps. It's an ever evolving world, and you need everybody's help in that process. Actually, speaking about collaboration, JLab seems to be able to create collab. You talk about collaboration all the time, and we're looking at some initiatives like the Blue Night program and also BARDA. Can you tell us a bit more what those
Yeah, for
programs
sure.
are?
I think Blue Night is a perfect example of how we like to show up in different things we like to do to make the value proposition come real. So Blue Night is a collaboration we have with BARDA, which is the U.S. Department, comes out of the U.S. Health and Human Services Department, and they're responsible for developing strategies, treatments for threats, biological threats, such as the pandemic. And in this instance, I think they're looking for solutions related to COVID-19, but the next pandemic that's going to happen. And so that
Yeah.
group was interested in partnering with JLABS to find companies that could participate or could come up with solutions that against these biological threats. So, we have a program where we're looking for companies who can come join JLABS. If they come and join JLABS, their rent is funded by or underfunded by BARDA. BARDA will
Mhm.
give them some specific resources to help them with the commercialization of their technology as it applies to these biological threats. And it's a perfect example of us bringing an organization that can help you accelerate your program, who can bring you advice and mentorship, even beyond what we can do. And so that partnership really has helped companies accelerate another part of their technology, give them another shot on goal, and also do it in a very important area of, you know, of health. And that's
Mhm.
been driven home by the events of the last, year.
Yeah, because this is a very almost strange problem to have to prepare yourself for the next pandemic. I don't think we need to explain why to anyone, but in practice, what are the kind of discussions that you have around the table to mobilize that energy for a problem that we don't have yet?
I think good. You know what? I don't have to mobilize. I think many of the small
Yeah.
companies, they're by their very nature, they're looking at stuff that's 5 to 6 years away. So when we talk to companies today about COVID-19, obviously they're saying, hey, listen, I can be available to help with COVID-19, but they're aware that their technology is probably going to be more applicable to the next one. So I think companies bring the energy, and what we're trying to do with Blue Night is harness that energy and try to provide a meaningful opportunity for them to commercialize. So I think the energy comes from the companies, and it's our job to facilitate that energy.
So we just create those natural connections, let's say. And I
That's
looked, and
exactly.
JLabs actually partnered with Mars and Sci-Far. Can you tell us a bit more about why you decided to go with those organizations in Toronto?
We're in every ecosystem where JLABS shows up. We really try to say who are the people who are driving innovation, who are the people who have the great connections, who can we come in and hit the ground running and catalyze growth. And so, those organizations were the ones we initially partnered with. I have to be careful because they're not the only organizations there, but they're the ones where we felt at the time were the best ones to partner with, and we continue to evolve our partnership model wherever we are. So, Blue Knight is an example of that, where we partner with BARTA as JLABS as a global organization. But I've got numerous partners, both in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, who we partner with on programming. We partner with to find companies. So, I think one of the things is if you're an organization out there and you have companies which are incubating and you want to meet
Mhm.
or talk with JLABS, reach out to us. We're always happy to partner and meet new companies and engage with new technologies as well.
Yeah, this is a fantastic way of approaching that because we see that sometimes with companies, they want to get involved in the innovation, but they do it maybe in a disruptive way that ultimately doesn't necessarily work. They don't exactly look at the landscape. They have plenty of good intentions. They come somewhere, but there are already some structure. So it's fantastic to see that you're very tuned on what already exists out there, and then highlight those connections.